Hello friends, my name is Jack, and today I will be speaking to you about university mentorship programs. But before I begin, I would like to ask you a question. How many of you at one point have felt uncomfortable or lost or unsupported at university? The answer is, okay, cool, hands. Neat. So that's pretty much what I was expecting. And that's pretty fair. I mean, these emotions aren't necessarily the most uncommon of feelings. And that might have something to do with the stressful demands of university impact on psychological health. The transition from high school to university has many academic and social challenges with profound impacts on psychological health. The National College Health Assessment found that 1 in 3 undergraduate students actually suffered from depression, and that 1 in 10 had seriously considered suicide at one point. A McMaster survey in 2012 found that 88.8% were feeling overwhelmed and 66.1% felt very sad. So why are so many students feeling so poor? What might be going on here? Of course, there's probably many factors, but one of them might have to do with actually how classrooms are designed. The educational goal structures define and sort of influence how learning takes place inside the classroom. And it used to be a very competitive environment, such that students had to compete against each other in order to succeed. Later on, this transitioned into an individualistic structure, where students were functionally isolated from each other, such that your learning was very independent, and you could succeed and work based on your own pace and based on your own learning ability. However, what they found was that learning isn't truly independent because what I do in a classroom and how I interact actually affects and influences the achievement of others. This gives rise to cooperative learning. Now, there are many ways to implement cooperative learning. In a classroom, you could have collaborative testing or problem-based learning. The jigsaw method actually involves giving students specific roles within a group, having them become experts in those roles, and then returning to the group to teach the novices. You could also implement cooperative learning outside of the classroom through peer group studying. And finally, you could implement cooperative learning through mentorship programs. What is a mentor? Well, a mentor could be a peer tutor, who is someone who teaches other students, a student who teaches other students. You could see this in student-led workshops, as well as undergraduate tutorial assistants. A mentor could also be a peer supporter, and this is less tied to the classroom and more involved with leadership development and the way that they might promote and motivate students to achieve their academic and personal goals. Where does mentorship exist at McMaster University? It exists in residence, it exists in student-led faculty societies, and it exists in non-faculty specific forms. Now, the best mentorship programs blend both structured and informal structured mentorship programs. So for example, you might have a 90-minute weekly session on a Tuesday, and this might deal with topics like effective studying habits, as well as stress management. Outside of this session, you could have informal, personal, one-on-one gatherings to build that more human, genuine connection. Surprisingly, it's not just the mentees that benefit from these programs. Mentors report feeling altruistically satisfied, as well as having the skill development of being a teacher and leader. They also go through personal growth and social reward just from simply the friends that they get out of the programs. Of course, the mentees also benefit, as they receive the support from this program that allows them to actually maintain their spots in university, as well as have smoother transitions. It's actually also been shown to have positive correlations to future career advancement down the road. Another very neat thing is that mentees are also able to incorporate and critically use many different types of feedback. Now, the feedback that others provide to us influence our self-perceptions. To better understand this, we're going to talk about self-evaluative motives, and specifically self-verification and self-enhancement. Self-enhancement is this need to feel good about ourselves, to have a positive sense of self. We like to know that we're doing a good job, so we tend to amplify our successes and minimize our failures. Self-verification is this desire for consistency in our self-perceptions. So when we're faced with a new situation, we're going to interpret it in a way that our existing self-perceptions are confirmed. For example, if you believe that you're extroverted, you will look in a situation for evidence that confirms you're an extrovert. And you will ignore evidence that might say, hey, you might be an introvert. Now, where does feedback come into play with this? Well, it depends on the nature of the feedback. Positive feedback, such as a letter of recommendation or a congratulations, is consistent with self-evaluative motives, and there's no conflict. However, negative feedback, which could be aggressive, as is the case with our man with the funky tie, or it could simply just be constructive criticism, is inconsistent with self-evaluative motives. Now, what this means is that when a person tells you that what you're doing isn't exactly as good as it could be, we lose that positive sense of self, and we have to change the way that we think about ourselves. This is actually associated with decreased motivation and decreased self-esteem, such that students who have negative feedback-seeking behavior are actually more at risk to depression. However, negative feedback isn't all bad, because without negative feedback, we would never grow or develop skills. You can imagine that if no one ever told you that you needed to improve, that you probably wouldn't have done much in the past 5 years. All of this is relevant because mentorship actually facilitates skill development through negative feedback. So here on our x-axis, we have negative feedback-seeking behavior. And our y-axis, changes in leadership efficacy, which is essentially your leadership development over time. Now, in the no mentorship condition, there was little difference across levels. You might note that individuals who had high negative feedback-seeking behavior actually decreased in leadership. This might have something to do with those self-motivation costs and self-esteem that we talked about earlier. However, in the condition where mentorship was present, students had drastic increases in their leadership ability. What it seems to be is mentorship actually helps students to maximize their skill development benefits while minimizing the self-esteem and motivational costs of negative feedback. So what I'm trying to get at here is that mentorship might simply be the next pillar in cooperative learning. And it's a step away from that cutthroat, stress-induced, competitive nature of university that's sometimes a little all too common. When we engage in mentorship, we're actually engaging in lifting each other up. We're creating this environment that is like, it's not necessarily running away and avoiding and fleeing negative feedback, and it's more giving it a shot as perhaps an opportunity for self-improvement. When we engage in mentorship, we might be taking a step towards a room where less people raise their hand when they're asked who here has felt uncomfortable, lost, or unsupported at university. Thank you.